Shalom. First and foremost, I want to start by giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well, and peace and blessings to the hopeful elect, pushing this word with all truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Shalom, shalom. It's your brother Quan Wath of the Great Millstone Charlotte Camp, going with a quick lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. And just doing a quick, land back on, you see the elder here in Vegas, going into these military men, right, that are growing weak, right? And I just wanted to get into, I searched on the chat, Jeremiah 51 and 30, right, going into how they're forborne to fight, so I'm going to play this little clip here, and then we'll get into that.
It's my last day wearing this uniform, and I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, fuck Donald Trump. Fuck Donald Trump.
But hey, that's the point, man, right? This is going to be the overarching sentiment for the majority of these troops, man, because they're going to be the ones sent over there to die pretty much for these Israelis, man, right? As they integrated the Israeli military to the American military, right? Those Israeli troops are going to be, right, ground forces here domestically, while the American troops are going to be sent overseas, man, right? But like you read here, Jeremiah 51 and verse 30, the mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holds. Their might hath failed. They became as women. They have burned their dwelling places. Her bars are broken. And you read this in the NLT. It reads, her mightiest warriors no longer fight, right? So all the great warriors that Babylon once could boast itself in, right? They're throwing in the towel, man, right? It says they stay in their barracks. Their courage is gone, right? There's no more courage. And they have no, that patriotism, man, right? That they once had during, World War I, World War II, right? Where they were fighting for country, right? Their fellow countrymen, Even you go into those different Gulf Wars, right? Vietnam, right? All of these things, there was still a level of patrioticness that these men had, man, right? That they were willing to go put their lives down for the country, right? But now they're seeing that this is a losing battle, man. On top of them fighting the cause of a welfare state, being those Israelis, man, right? It says they have become like women. The invaders have burned the houses and broken down the city gates, and that's what's happening right now, man. Right? It's gonna happen on a physical level, but we're seeing it happen on a societal level, man. Right? And they're gonna be doing that through the technology. What's it called? The hackers and things of that nature, right? Right, they're gonna affect the banking systems. They're gonna affect, right, all the infrastructure, as we'll read here in the Chat GPT. Because what I just did, I just asked Chat to parallel the current Iran and U.S. war to Jeremiah 51 and 30. Right now, it says some possible parallels include military exhaustion or reluctance. Right, and this is what we're seeing. Right, a reluctance to fight, man. Right, they're tired of watching their friends get sent over there to die. Right, and then being right in tow. Right, all those caskets coming back with the flags folded all over them, man. Right, them lying about the casualties, right, from these various missile strikes, man. Right, it says Jeremiah describes Babylon's warriors, right, and Babylon being America, as ceasing to fight and remaining in their strongholds. In a modern context, some see a parallel whenever a nation's military becomes hesitant, overstretched, or shifts toward defensive positions rather than offensive ones, man. And that's what America is doing, right? They stretched themselves too thin. They took on a war that they couldn't complete, right? As the scriptures tell you, let me see if I can find that. It talks about whether you have measure to complete it, right? Let me see if I can find that. this in Luke? Yep. This is Luke 14 and 31. It reads, "Or what king going to make war against another king sitteth not down first and consulteth whether he be able with 10,000 to meet him that cometh against him with 20,000? Or else while the other is yet a great way off, he sendeth an ambassage and desireth conditions of peace." Right? So this the point being, right? Babylon didn't count the cost, man. Right? So like it says, now their soldiers, right, are exhausted, they're reluctant, right? Because the military has become hesitant. You know, we see the argument that Pete Hegseth had got into, right, with those senators because they're asking for more and more money, right, with no results, right? It says they're overstretched, right? They've exhausted their what's the word? Uh, their missile stockpiles, right? Their defense missiles, right? And now they're behind the eight ball, man, right? Because they started this, and you know Iran is willing to finish it, man, right? If America wants to keep going, they'll keep going, right? So America's gonna have to bow out, but we know they've put themselves in a position, right, being the battering ram of those Israelis, that there's no escape route, man, right? They've painted themselves into a corner. It says or shifts towards defensive positions rather than offensive ones, right? So they're usually, right, the aggressor, but now, as brothers have been saying, they're on the back foot, man, right? And they don't know how to fight off the back foot, right? They don't know how to counter and things of that nature, man, right? They don't have any real strategy. Their whole mo was overwhelming force, right? And once somebody endured that, they have no second option, right? It says loss of confidence that might have failed speaks of a collapse in morale or confidence before defeat. Some interpreters compare this to periods when powerful nations face internal division, right? And what do we see right now, right? A division on all sides, man, right? Let's get that, right? This is Matthew 12 and 25. And Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. And that's what's happening to Babylon, man. That's what's happening to America as we speak, right? It's divided on all fronts. It says, in every city or house divided against itself shall not stand, right? So it's going to fall, man, right? It's a guarantee of the that division leading to, right, the collapse, right? And it's a slow burn right now, right? But that implosion is happening, right? You know, with the people, right? That's why they're gonna have the military here, right, to quell any sedition, right? Scriptures talk about how there should be sedition among men, right? Verse 26, and if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand, right? So how is this kingdom going to continue, man? It's not. It can't, right? It's beyond repair, right? I guess like the scriptures tell you, if she could be healed, right? Let's get that. And we'll go back. It's 9. Yep. Jeremiah 51 and verse 8. It says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her take balm for her pain? If so be she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go every one into his own country. For her judgment reacheth into the heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. Right? So that the punishment that Babylon the Great is going to face, right, is unavoidable, man. Right? There's nothing that's going to heal it. There's no ointments, nothing. Right? I think there's another one in Lamentations. Not Lamentations. Nahum. Nahum 3. And yep, this is Nahum 3:19. There is no healing of thy bruise. Thy wound is grievous. All that hear the bruit of thee shall clap the hand over thee. For upon whom hath not thy wickedness passed continually, right? That continual stroke, right? So these nations are watching Babylon fall, right, to its wound, man, right? That infection, right? That grievous wound, right, is causing that the body to die. That whore is being put to death slowly, man, right? And the NLT says there is no healing of your wound. Your injury is fatal. All who hear of your destruction will clap their hands for joy, right? And that's what's happening, man. Where can anyone be found who has not suffered from your continual cruelty, right? So now all these nations are, in a state of joy, watching Babylon fall, but it's still, right? We still have to reach that climax, man, right? And that wound is part of that division, going back to that loss of confidence, man, right? Because it says that instability is causing the soldiers to be unstable as well. Some interpreters compare this to periods when powerful nations face internal division, right? Prolonged wars, and we often go into how Babylon has been at war. I think it's like 97%, right, of its in the time of its inception, man, right? Like 240 something out of 250 years, man, right? Prolonged wars or declining public support for military action, and that started with Vietnam, right? They had the protests going on, right, and they lost that war, and it's been more and more public outrage about military actions taking place, man, right? So now that's trickled into the minds of the soldiers, right? So that's what we saw the clip of that guy saying he quit, man, right? He's throwing in the towel, right, waving the white flag, and it's going to be more because these people aren't joining the military for the country. They're joining it for the benefits, man, right? And once they realize it's not worth it, giving up their life for a few $100,000 or to be able to buy a Camaro or a Hellcat, right, to get your college paid for, to have a house, to get all these various loans and things of that nature, right? It's not worth putting your life on the line, right? You're gonna see more and more people, right, hanging it up, man. It says infrastructure under attack. Her dwelling places are burned. Depicts destruction reaching civilian or strategic infrastructure, right? And we watched Iran, right, bomb every single U.S. installment, right, over there in the so-called Middle East, man, right? And now what's gonna happen is they're gonna start attacking America's infrastructure, right? You're gonna see them start to attack the grids, right? They're gonna have these cyber attacks, right? All these things are on the table, right? Especially with them in works with China, right? With Russia, right? The infrastructure is gonna be a major talking point in the near future, man, because that's the next direction that's coming, man, right? The cyber warfare, right, is all on the table. On top of the missiles, right? It says modern missile and drone warfare often targets military facilities, energy infrastructure, or cities, making the imagery feel familiar, right? And it's going to be, beyond the missiles, man. It's going to be, right, the financial system, the power grid, the water, right? All these things are going to be under attack, right? It says broken defenses. Her bars are broken, symbolizes breached security and the collapse of protected barriers. Today, some would compare this to successful cyber attacks, right? Missile penetration of air defenses, or the failure of deterrence, right? Because America's lost that cachet, right? The fear that they once put in people, right? That's why it says here, let's get that. Are they not weak as we, right? The hammer of the earth, man, has been brought asunder as we speak. So Isaiah 14, and we'll start in 5. Starting in 4. It's like that thou should take up this proverb, Isaiah 14:4, that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased, right? So the world is seeing it, right? And the people are feeling it, man, right? And these soldiers don't want to fight for that anymore. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers, right? So that power is growing weaker and weaker. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. So we're about to start seeing that persecution take place, right? As the scriptures talk about the those that dwell comfortably, right, without care, right? We'll grab that. The whole earth is at rest, verse 7, and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller has come up against us, right? And that goes into the actual trees as well as the people, man, right? The people being at peace. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones from the earth. It had raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? Right? And this is what we're seeing, man. All these nations are looking at America, right? As we go back to that chat GPT, right? They're looking at the defenses being broken, man, right? The collapse of the infrastructure, the collapse of the society as a whole, man, right? That's why there's an influx, right? And what's the word? A focus on keeping the minds of the people distracted, man, right? Their whole plan right now is to keep the minds of the people on, outside sources, right, of entertainment and things of that nature, so that they're not looking at what's happening on a geopolitical scale, man, right? And how these things are going to have adverse effects in America, right? Finishing out. Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows, the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee, going into that decay, right? Right, the decadence that America has pushed upon the whole earth. As the scriptures tell you, she spreadeth herself as a green bay tree, right? And so they've taught the world, right, the ways of this wickedness, man, right? And became that major influence. You saw that through the World Cup and these people coming over and enjoying the decadence that America offers, right? But not understanding that that's causing that decay, man, right? Both physically and spiritually, mentally, man, right? Societally, right? Economically, right? It's decay on all levels, right? And going back to the point, the mighty men, right, are a part of this, man, right? So the men that they have to choose from as soldiers are coming out of that decay. They're coming from that decadence. And so they don't want to take part in those fights, man, right? It says, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations, right? And this is what we're seeing, is them falling swiftly, man, right? So we'll finish this out. I think that's the point on that. Yeah. But the point being, man, right, the mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight, right? They don't want to fight for this place anymore. That's why they had the integration with those Israelis, because they're gonna be, used to, come against you Americans, man. Right? They're gonna be set up as the what's the word? The barrier between you and the so-called elites, man. Right? They're gonna be pushing people into these concentration camps. They're gonna be pushing people right to these chipping stations. Right? They're gonna be rounding up people who are dissenters, or who have adverse, uh, what's the word, thoughts, right, and teachings, right. If you preach Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, right, as it says in Revelation 12:17, right? And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of the Most High and have the testimony of Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, right? If you have that, those Israelis are going to be used against you, man, right? And those Americans are going to be used, right, as cannon fodder, right? Because one thing we know about the IDF soldiers is that they have no qualms about killing women and children, right? They have no qualms about going and raping and doing all these different things, man, right? That's what they specialize in. They don't specialize in actual warfare. They specialize in civilian casualties and things of that nature, man, right? So that's what they're gonna be over here to do, right? To control, to do crowd control and things and like stuff like that, you know. Let's go to, and we'll close with this because just going back to that clip, right? This is what the actually is this. No, that's not it. Let's see. Oh, nope, this is it. It's like it, but this is the sentiment, right, that's coming from all these American soldiers, man, right? This Jeremiah 50 and verse 35. It reads, "A sword is upon the Chaldeans, saith the Lord, and upon the inhabitants of Babylon, and upon her princes, and upon her wise men. A sword is upon the liars, and they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed." Right, and this is what we're seeing is the great dismay, right, coming to these soldiers, man, right, and coming to the people as a whole. That's why I told you, all the inhabitants, man, the inhabitants of Babylon, her princes, right, the people in high society, right, her wise men, right, even right these technocrats, right. The sword is upon them, upon the liars, right, you false prophets, right, upon the mighty men, right, these soldiers, right. A sword is upon their horses, and upon their chariots, and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her, and they shall become as women, right? So that these men, right, are gonna be as women in this time, man, right? They're gonna be in a state of dismay. They're gonna be in a state of, as the scriptures tell you, right, the pangs, right, Isaiah 13, right, are gonna be upon them, man, as a woman with child, right? That great fear, and we're seeing it before things have even hit the peak, right? This is small potatoes, man, right? When it comes to warfare, right? Once things start to heat up, once things are starting to heat up, right, you're gonna really start to see men lose their wits, man. You know, the sword is upon her treasures, and they shall be robbed. But that's the point right there, man. Right? The men are gonna be dismayed. We'll get that Isaiah 13 too as well, right? Isaiah 13 and 6. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all the hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. Right, and this is the beginning of that, man. Right, and they shall be afraid. Pangs and sorrow shall take hold of them. They shall be in pain as a woman that travaileth. They shall be amazed one at another. Their faces shall be as flames. Right, so that great fear is going to be upon them. Right, all these soldiers. Right, and even this going into just the people in Babylon as a whole. Right, they're gonna be in a great state of fear, right? The men who all these strong men, you see these bodybuilders out here, these military men, right? These good old boys, all that shit, right? They're all gonna find themselves in a state of great fear, man, right? Because it's gonna be a time like no other, right? But the build up to that point is where these so-called mighty men, right? Again, are gonna be forborne to fight, man. They're gonna refuse, you know, vehemently, man, right? With great intensity. That's why you saw that video, right? We'll play it one more time. The clip that the elder played.
It's my last day wearing this uniform, and I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, fuck Donald Trump. Heart, fuck Donald Trump.
And so that's going to be coming from more and more military men, right, in these days to come, man. So, Lord willing, that was an edifying lesson to the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. I want to close by giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rechah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well. And peace and blessings to the hopeful elect, pushing this word with all truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Shalom, shalom. Kwam Yasharallah, and the Bible Ball. Shalom.